We are those known to this group as Tovo. We greet this circle in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. We come on behalf of the Confederation of planets in service to the one infinite creator. We are joined by our companions and dear friends, those of Halos and Biondha, and those known to you as Lados are also with us, as this group comes to you together. For the call that this group and the circle has expressed, and the pattern that you have settled into in your service of channeling calls for these distinct entities. Yet we approach together to form the contact together, so that we may all be present, though each of the instruments present may express the words of the unique individual entities within this group, as this is the habit or pattern that this channeling circle has developed. This is acceptable and beneficial to us, as it allows us to practice our own dynamic of speaking words and combining our thoughts and resources as we interact with circles like this one. It has been some of what you experience as time since we have last been with this channeling circle. This is also acceptable to us, for despite the passage of time within your experience, the desire for service through this means of exploring what is possible through the service of channeling remains alive within the hearts of those present. This desire creates a potential and a calling that we are responsive to regardless of whether we are actively practicing in this act of channeling. Thus, we are with you at all times with this desire in your hearts, and we are honored to share this space within your heart with you. We are also quite eager and excited to again have the opportunity to manifest this desire and this potential within this circle as we continue to explore and express ourselves in new and unique ways through these instruments. We would, as a group, offer the regular request that we of the Confederation offer to your group, and that is that we come to you to offer our own perspective in hopes that it may inspire and inform your own journey. But we do not wish to offer this perspective as instruction or dogma, or a set of practices and beliefs that must be accepted. But rather, we share this to provide catalyst for your mind, your heart, and your soul. We hope to offer something that orients you towards that which you seek. That is the light and the love of the one infinite creator, which can be found within your own heart. This is our desire in everything that we share, that it may aid you in seeking this light within yourself. We are grateful for this opportunity, and at this time, would ask if there is a query within the circle to which we may respond.
Thank you, Tovo, for being with us today. I've got some complex questions. In the complicated and shadowy workings of our military-industrial governmental complex, there's been a growing movement towards some form of disclosure. That is, an event whereby the governments of the world, particularly the U.S., openly and formally acknowledge the existence of non-human visitation, recovered technologies, etc. Though it's sure to be one big, muddied mess on every level, this potential event in human history would be paradigm-changing, potentially stimulating great quantities of spiritual seeking and polarization in consciousness. And that includes you in some way, the Confederation, that is. Can you share your perspective on this unfolding? How does the law of one apply to this? And how may positively oriented seekers use the potential opportunity to be of service?
We are Tovo and have received this query, my brother. This can be a difficult and complicated topic to explore, for there are, as you are aware, barriers or boundaries in place manifested out of a desire to protect your free will as a population upon your planet, which is attempting to find its own way within the creation. There are limits to that which we may speak, and various aspects of this dynamic that you have called disclosure that we cannot shed light on, for it is for you, as a peoples, to discover. But we are happy to share a certain perspective that might help orient this group and your peoples towards receiving such catalyst and integrating it within the individual and collective in a useful and positive fashion. We would begin this exploration with a reiteration of our limitations as the Confederation of planets in service to the one infinite creator, that we are unable, in many cases, to interact in a very direct way with your population. There have been limited contacts, you may say, such as this type of contact you are experiencing now through the vocal channeling. There have been some other types of contact that may seem to those experiencers as more direct. And there have even been contacts of a sort with your governments and, as you have termed, military-industrial complexes, those institutions that operate on a shadowy level within your society but have much control, have much power, and exert a particular influence that is not readily apparent to you as individuals. However, we are not the only source of these contacts. For those of the Orion group, as you know them, also have a desire to have contact with your planet, with you as individuals, and have a desire to exert a particular type of influence upon your population, and can find great inroads through the structures of power as you perceive them, such as your militaries, your governments, and your various other institutions that operate and uphold your society in various ways. And so you can see from this description that the influences and attempt to share the perspective of the one infinite creator with your planet and with your governments is varied, and this variation can create confusion and a lack of consistency. When we look upon the various workings of these groups and look towards what is known to you as disclosure, or open acknowledgement among these institutions that there is more present within the universe, and even upon your planet, then you are aware of, this confusion must be remembered. For not every aspect of what you as individuals or your institutions receive from us or from the Orion group may seem consistent or make sense, you may say. The confusion in this arena, which is much hidden at the moment within these groups attempting to grapple with how to share with your peoples this reality as they experience it, has sparked, you might say, various mythologies and narratives. There are many stories about who this other presence might be, how many of these presences there are, what their desires are, what their goals are, etc. And as this confusion spawns these narratives, some of these narratives express themselves to the groups interested in disclosure and interested in having more open contact. We would offer our assessment of your current situation that open contact is not necessarily possible in the near future because of this confusion. There is some thwarting of a cohesive understanding of what such open contact could entail, and we of the Confederation are limited by this confusion and cannot make ourselves known in an apparent way until there is a more cohesive understanding and openness to these influences. The Orion group, thus, has also a desire to exacerbate and energize this confusion and plant within these narratives seeds of fear, of distrust, of secrecy, of doom, and of any manner of difficult and imbalancing perspective that causes those seekers interested in such open contact to orient themselves in a way that is not compatible with how we, the Confederation, might choose to make ourselves known to you as a population. Thus, we would suggest, when attempting to grapple with this very difficult and complicated situation, and as the narrative of open contact with so-called extraterrestrial sources becomes greater and greater within your collective discussion, that you and groups such as this maintain a steady tuning and orientation towards the message that you sense within your hearts and that resonates with us, the Confederation, that of the one infinite Creator's love and light, the healing that is possible, the joy and the unity, and the energy that can be manifest to bring together you as a peoples. This is a much-needed perspective and will be needed more and more as this confusing narrative and these competing influences that will become manifest through such open discussion become more prominent. We encourage you to maintain this focus and practice this focus, not just through what you share and engage in with this practice of channeling, but to maintain it through regular practices of meditation and ritual, to think constantly about and orient your thoughts toward a source of unity and message of unity that might come from such open awareness of extraterrestrial sources and intelligences. We encourage you to speak to the illusion of fear and distrust, to speak to the aspect of control and bellicosity present within those seeds planted by the Orion group, and to bring them into your heart, not to battle them, but to accept them, to understand that they are a part of the Creator as well, that they are a natural part of your human experience that is to be loved and to be integrated. If the energies of fear, distrust, and bellicosity are given too much energy and power within the self, they can bring one further away from unity. And this is the goal of the Orion Group, to exacerbate the separation that, at this point within your planet's evolution, creates more chaos and confusion. This trajectory towards what is known as disclosure will exacerbate this and create more opportunities for both us of the Confederation and the Orion Group. And though we are grateful for your efforts, we encourage all who encounter our words to reiterate and reinforce their spiritual practices that allow them to live within the love and light of the one infinite Creator through this chaos, so that these messages that we share with you become more and more prominent within the collective narrative as it gains popularity among your population. Is there a further query, my brother?
I might have to follow up more on that later. I really appreciated that answer. Thank you, Tovo. Kind of in the same ballpark, Ra says, we shall not interfere with the, shall we say, planetary game. It is not central to the harvest. I believe that the planetary game they refer to is the ancient and present game of global geopolitics. This game would actually seem to have immense significance for the harvest in terms of creating conditions of service to self or service to others, of increasing or decreasing the suffering of people, of subjugating or empowering people. Thus, my question, how is the planetary game, as Ra said, not central to the harvest?
We are Tovo and are aware of this query, my brother. We would not presume, necessarily, to speak on behalf of those of Ra, yet we can offer a perspective that we believe helps to orient this query and shed light on the intended meaning, as we would believe it. However, we ask that you take this merely as an opinion of those of Tovo and not those of Ra. Indeed, we do resonate, you may say, with this statement that Ra has given. For the particular circumstances that are referred to as the planetary game have been shifting and changing for the entire existence of humanity upon your planet. The circumstances can indeed have a great influence on the life of the individual, but the emphasis that we believe is intended within these words is that the circumstances outside of oneself are irrelevant to the ability of the self to discover the heart of love within the self. That this presence of the one infinite Creator within oneself can be realized regardless of what is happening within the planetary game. Whatever the rules of that game are at the given moment, the instruction for the individual and for groups such as this do not change, and that is, whatever those circumstances, to attempt to discover love within the circumstances, and to look for the opportunities of service that are made available by those circumstances. And so even if the planetary game, as you call it, becomes chaotic, becomes difficult, and creates circumstances that empower the oppression of others that generate suffering, the response is indeed even more available to relate to these things with a heart of love, to attempt to serve others to the best of your ability within those circumstances. It is not our opinion that the planetary game, as it is called, is completely irrelevant to the conditions of harvest, but rather that the primary consideration for harvest and the primary consideration that those of Ra have when they were offering these words was of orienting the individual to this perspective, that no matter what the planetary game is and how it manifests, the individual has one directive in terms of harvest, and that is to seek and discover love and to open the self in service to others. Is there a further query, my brother?
That was very satisfactory, particularly regarding the entity's one directive, so to speak, regarding the harvest being to seek the heart of self regardless of, or even more importantly in response to, the circumstances one is experiencing. To continue that line of thought, almost exactly 45 years ago, Ra said, "This is going to be a long quote, forgive me. Your peoples have, at this time-space present, the technological achievement, if you would call it that, of being able to create and fly the shape and type of craft known to you as unidentified flying objects. Unfortunately for the social memory complex vibratory rate of your peoples, these devices are not intended for the service of mankind, but for potential destructive use. This further muddles the vibratory nexus of your social memory complex, causing a situation whereby neither those oriented towards serving others, nor those oriented towards serving self can gain the energy power which opens the gates to intelligent infinity for the social memory complex. This, in turn, causes the harvest to be small. Unlike the quote in the previous question I asked, Ra seems to indicate that this particular planetary game of UFO secrecy does impact the harvest because these technologies and understandings are fashioned for destructive purposes and because they are suppressed from public awareness. These technologies and understandings thus do not support general polarization in one direction or another, is my takeaway. So, how can we reconcile this passage with the one in the previous question? And how does the aforementioned situation cause the harvest to be small?
We are those of Tovo and are aware of the query and will do our best to address this seeming inconsistency to the greatest of our abilities. However, we again must absolve ourselves of speaking on behalf of those of Ra who gave this information in a particular circumstance from a particular perspective that we do not share. We can, however, agree with the assessment of the state of this so-called technology, which is available to your peoples, but is hidden for various reasons. It would be helpful to inform this query by exploring how the availability of this technology could influence the harvest were it not kept so secret and hidden. And that is that this technology not only challenges what this instrument would call collective narrative about science and physics, but also necessarily includes some component of mystery involved with consciousness and the light of the one infinite creator. This technology, if it were more available to you as a peoples, would spark a type of inspiration and exploration of these things, such as consciousness and the fringes of your physics and science, in such a way that would reveal more and more the true nature of your mind-body-spirit complexes, the true nature of the reality around you, and how it is shaped and formed by intelligent infinity and intelligent energy. This technology also could be used more directly for service to others or service to self. For if it were made available and publicly used, the potential would be great for both healing and for destruction and control. However, as they are currently manifest, these technologies are used on very limited bases. They are not widely acknowledged as part of the technology available to your governments and militaries. They are kept hidden for various reasons, as we have said. But to speak to the seeming inconsistency, it is true that the secrecy, as you have identified it, and as Ra has identified it, is part of the planetary game and has a great influence over the harvest. For if it were available, the harvest could be greater, but the statement, as Ra gave it in terms of their concern of the planetary game, also includes the limits and the ability of the Confederation to have an influence over things such as the secrecy, for it is your peoples who have this technology and have decided to keep it hidden. And while we may have some level of contact and influence, it is not our goal to attempt to persuade you, one way or another, to make this technology available, or to convince you to take up any particular orientation to such technology or society. Instead, it is our desire to plant within the individuals the catalyst necessary to then bring about the change from the human level, you may say, to allow the seeds of inspiration and the thoughts of love and light and service to blossom within the soil of the heart of the individual, thus making the technology available through the ground up, to bring awareness to this technology from the perspective of the one infinite creator and the love and light available in every moment. However, we believe it is necessary to acknowledge that this is indeed a way in which the so-called planetary game has an influence on your ability, as a peoples, to polarize in one way or another. But rather, it is our opinion and our experience in working with the Confederation that attempting to influence the game in this way, so that the harvest may be increased is ineffective. Rather, it is our desire and our directive to reach individuals and attempt from the ground up to ensure that love blossoms, and that it is love that then reveals this technology to you as a people's, so that it may be expressed and shared once it is made available with that heart of love. Is there a further query, my brother?
I love the bit about love being the doorway and primary factor. In response to Tovo's prompt, not on those questions, let's set aside this government business and focus on you for a moment. Tovo, can you share something about your backstory or your density of origin, if you have a specialty, as it were, and so on?
We are those of Tovo and appreciate this query, my brother. This will be the final query that we respond to through this instrument. We are excited to share with you that we find ourselves in a sort of new journey, you may say. Our harvest into the fifth density, as we experience it, is somewhat recent, and our experience of working with groups like this has shifted in this recent past. You may say, recent from our perspective, that is, which is quite a longer perspective than you have as an incarnate third density being on planet Earth. However, this is still very new to us. For our specialty, as you may say, has been through our evolution through the fourth density of attempting to help groups, such as this on third density planets, channel in one way or another, not necessarily of the vocal variety, but to aid the perspective shift that comes along with channeling, to help mind-body-spirit complexes within the veiled third density adopt greater perspectives to open their personalities up to different ways of expression and being. And as we have undertaken this journey and responded to a call of this group for new experiences of channeling, we are able to then practice within our new landscape of the fifth density. We are able to find a new method of sharing this service that we have explored through our fourth density, and to then attempt to offer it through this group as you experience the vocal channeling. We are grateful to those of Lados for enabling this connection, for we are not typically accustomed to the method of connecting with individuals that allows for the vocal channeling, and so we have been learning from our brothers and sisters of Lados, and they have been stabilizing and offering themselves as aids in this process, along with those of Halos and Biondha. We are very grateful for this opportunity and are excited and have been quite satisfied so far with our ability to communicate through this instrument and with this group. And we are excited and anticipate that the more that we spend time with this group, and the more that this group tests the boundaries of what is possible through channeling and what types of connections can be made between the third density being and those of the Confederation continue to blossom, that we will be able to experience new vistas alongside you intrepid seekers within the veil. We are those of Tovo, and at this time, we would release this contact with this instrument and encourage the one known as G to open up to our friends who are with us, of those of Halos, so that they may speak their thoughts. We are Tovo.
Respectful greetings, our friends. It has been some of your time since last we were with you, and we have been anticipating this moment to be with you once again so that, through this dance, we may be of mutual service to others, to each other, and to those who may enjoy these words. We thank this instrument for his challenging, and we ask him to release some of the nervousness around performance and channeling and relax into his center, allowing his dedication to this process to work as it will without over-concern. For it is not in the precision of word or concept, particularly, that this service is most effectively rendered, but it is in alignment with the love and the light of the One that creates the open portal through which those energies may move, with lesser importance placed upon exact word choice. We would open this contact for any question which this circle may have.
Thank you. First, just because you didn't say it, and just to be double sure, can you say who we are speaking to, who has made contact with the instrument known as G?
We apologize for this oversight. We are those of Halos.
Okay, thank you. I figured that was the case. I have a question. I'd like to continue exploring your focus of helping to alleviate the disharmony of war and bellicosity. The Confederation has affirmed, in various ways, the power of prayer and meditation in aiding peace on our planet. Often, seekers feel helpless in the face of such large forces that lead us to war and violence, and prayer and meditation seem to be the only way to help. Can you elaborate on exactly how praying and meditating for peace helps metaphysically? And can you offer any particular techniques or perspectives for utilizing these tools that might help give them more power and structure, and empower seekers to influence peace upon our planet?
We as Halos and thank you for these wonderful questions, our friend, as they are important ones for those of your third density, particularly for those beings magnetized towards service, those whose every fiber sees the world situation as it appears to them, particularly in the news of your planet, and who wish to do something to stop the killing, to bring justice where there is none, to balance out the scales and lift people from inequality or poverty or disenfranchisement or disempowerment. It can be dispiriting to those of your planet to think that there is only this petition given to an invisible universe, this act of praying or meditating that, in most all cases, does not manifest a cause and effect outcome whereby the entity can link to the particular prayer or meditative act a desired change, the positive outcome manifested. It may seem hopeless. Fortunately for those who have encountered a more mature philosophy, and we would count the law of one among those bodies of work, one can be bolstered in the awareness, on multiple levels, that there are countless beings in the unseen realm who ache to be of service in any manner available to them. Those who wait on the other end of the telephone, shall we say, for it to ring, that they may be given permission and opportunity to jump forward and lend their strength, their energy, their talent, and a very powerful focus and portal through which the Creator itself may move, that the situation or person or group may receive the loving guidance of eternity. This awareness is important to hold because prayer and meditation and contemplation are not mechanical acts or technical procedures. They are expressions of faith. Faith is not the straw to which one clings as an act of hopelessness. Faith is not desperation, though desperation, indeed, may precipitate and inspire a true act of faith. Faith starts out as positive belief, but becomes a surety, a knowing beyond intellectual knowledge, a transcendence of the rational mind and the world system whereby the entity has leapt into the air, into nothing, and rests not upon a structure of logical thought or scientific theory, but in that eternity which is forever beyond space and time, which was before space and time, which is one's true nature. Faith is the bridge to this reality, your deeper nature. And through this bridge or portal or doorway, one who is upon the positive path is more centered in their own power. This is not a faith which grants one the ability to order the universe or correct its wrongs or distortions, but to see to the true situation behind and beneath the mirage of the illusion of separation. And in this clear seeing, there is a fundamental basis of acceptance, of love and acceptance. This includes love and acceptance in the face of all which transpires on the surface of your planet in the way of harm and war and disharmony. There is a peaceful acceptance of the Creator manifesting itself in the light and the dark. And in this seeing, there is the opportunity to respond. And there is the opportunity to bring this vision to a moment where the teeth are gnashing and the entities are twisted and distorted and locked within a dream. Perhaps a dark dream of retribution, of hatred, of division, and so forth. This faith is central to the act of prayer and meditation, central in knowing that the self is never alone. Faith opens oneself up, opens up the shell and armor to the presence of many, many light beings of a cosmic family who all vibrate with love and hope with service to offer. Thus, this faith gives the prayer wings and supports the self in meditation to pull back from the enclosure of the mind's thoughts that the self may expand its awareness in that rarefied home air of true beingness beyond separation. And these prayers and meditations, so empowered, may be of aid on multiple levels. We understand that the positively oriented seeker wishes to bring change to the world, to heal the battle, to stop the fighting, to restore hearts so that entities can see each other not as non-family others, but as brothers and sisters, regardless of their ethnicity or country of origin or political belief, and so forth. We understand that positive entities wish to effect these and similar changes, and to use tools such as prayer and meditation toward this end. But first and foremost, prayer and meditation work upon the self. For yours is a collective situation. You as an entity are not an island looking out upon a continent of other selves and governments and societies. You as a seeming individual and entity are inextricably bound into the many-threaded tapestry of your society. You as an entity are one nuance of color in this multifaceted bouquet of colors and shadows. Thus, as you use these faculties and tools of prayer and meditation, you are, to put it simply, raising your own vibration. The collective of which you are a part can only ever change, not by imposed or even corrective force from without, but can only change by one entity at a time from within. It is your honor and duty, which rises to a sacred and humble quality, to do your part to purify yourself as a vessel through which the Creator moves, to be one who is less captured by his own personal agenda in order to be one who moves, as this instrument heard his friend Wes say just yesterday evening, with causeless motion. To move in the moment when and where and as service is needed, less and less bound by value judgment, with more and more refined, loving discernment for what is needed. In the moment, and as the self changes through prayer and meditation, the self becomes a beacon, a constant invitation to those of the world into the ways of love, into a higher path whereby it can be made visible that life without judgment is simply better. We would ask the seeker to consider that, though they wish to change the world, that they first work upon themselves to change themselves. But there is yet an effect to be had by these practices of meditation and prayer upon outcomes and upon situations. In meditation, specifically, there is a reduction of the noise in the collective mind. War is possible only when a great excitement of the passion of separation and the capture of victimhood and the lust of dominance can cloud the being. Meditation can be the rays of light that dissipate those clouds and quiet down that noise, so that the peace that had always been there may be made more visible. This, you as an entity, may offer the collective through meditation. And as we have said, there are untold quantities and qualities of unseen presences available to help, wanting to help. And you may ask these in petitionary fashion for support toward particular scenarios, to those suffering in war-torn regions and to those locked in battle. These sources cannot override free will, of course, or undo the thinking which has entangled peoples into fight, but they can find many subtle ways to lend comfort and strength and guidance to those open to receiving it, to leave hints, and to offer nudges around the edges. There is help, though the tangles of your world can only ultimately be solved by the collective will of your people. And in closing, we would say that there is a gradation of effectiveness of these practices that manifest not from right technique, per se. And we realize that we have not spoken to the technique portion of your question, but as our response has been long, we shall wrap this up. Effectiveness arises not out of correct technique, per se, though practice and type of practice has its place, but rather out of the purity of the seeker and the strength of the will and the faith. Purity is certainly something one has to one degree or another upon birth. However, one's degree of purity, that is, their freedom from separation, is not static or locked into place. Through the disciplines of the personality and the work about which we have spoken to you many times, the third density entity may purify themselves, which is a topic that we shall leave for another discussion. But through this purity and the learning to harness this incredibly powerful faculty of will and faith within you through sustained use through focus, one can increase the effectiveness of these practices and indeed even learn to call upon, as those of Ra describe it, a great mass of light strength, to be of service in rather potent ways, we may say. We thank those of this circle for the patience, and would ask if there is another query that those of Halos may respond to?
Yes, thank you so much, Halos, for that very deep answer. I think in a similar vein, or at least you were talking about work upon the self being a primary mode of service and healing the collective. I have a question about something that we talked about in a previous session regarding dehumanization. It's easy for anybody to grasp dehumanization in the context of an oppressed group. I think, where an oppressor can dehumanize their other selves and thus excuse treating them as less than human, essentially. And I think we as seekers, when we witness that, want to end that oppression and restore the dignity of humanity to those who are oppressed. But in this dynamic, I realize it's also easy to fall into attitudes of dehumanizing those who we view as the oppressor, whether we are part of an oppressed group being dehumanized by them, or if we are witnessing this happen to our other selves at the hands of some other selves. So my question is, it's obvious to me the benefit of restoring humanity and healing the dehumanization of the oppressed group. But is it valuable and worthy to also attempt to maintain and protect the humanity of the oppressors in this dynamic? And if so, can you give any insights into how to do that within the self?
We are grateful for this well-fashioned query, for it is another inroad into that many-pathed journey of healing the primary wound of separation and awakening self and others from the dream. And this particular dynamic that you describe of the oppressed and the oppressor is something of a vortex within the dream that has enormous draw, particularly for those experiencing this dynamic firsthand, but also including for those witnessing such dynamics, to lock entities within their roles, to draw them into a conviction that they are a somebody, and those who are being witnessed are somebodies. 3, in such a way that very effectively obscures the original thought, the truth of oneness and true identity. And we would say that while we cannot, of course, prescribe how the third density entity ought to relate to any particular given circumstance, including that of the oppressed and the oppressor, we would say that, in principle, it is for the positive entity very important to protect the humanity, as you said, of all beings regardless of the character upon the stage they are playing, whether they wear a Nazi uniform, or the clothing and personality of an abusive spouse, or a corporate leader, or a negatively oriented clergy member, and so on. They are you. You are they. With the right adjustment of your own dial settings, shall we say simplistically, your own personality could behave like theirs. Kink the lines, or rather kink and block the lines of your own system of perception through your energy centers, and your personality, likewise, could be committing acts of barbarism. While those who read our words have access to, and have become aware of, the inner light that is beyond their personality selves, all it takes to create a partition of separation is something to cause the perception to close the eyes and to close the heart to this inner light. And in an environment wherein the conscious mind is already seemingly partitioned from the heart of self, it becomes, oh, so easy to take on these perceptions. In other words, our friends, we share these lines of thought as a way to encourage empathy. In this empathy, one need not abandon discernment to see the situation clearly and to not enable abuse and harm, but also fundamentally, to not fail to see the Creator. In this situation, the Creator is in no way located only on the oppressed side of the equation, but completely and fully on both sides of the equation. Indeed, these roles change and shift so that those who were once oppressed may one day put on the mask and costume of the oppressor upon the stage. But these cycles of subjugation and oppression happen in an environment such as you described, whereby there is the othering, the dehumanizing, the stripping of dignity. Thus, to not protect the humanity and to not see the divinity of the wrongdoer is to be, shall we say, counterproductive. It is to perpetuate the fundamental conditions that give rise to the situation which one is seeking to end and heal. From this much can be extrapolated. In short, we would say that regardless of whatever role one has adopted, including and especially the harmful one. It is the central work of the self to see the Creator. Indeed, this underlies a portion of the reason that the veil itself came into existence, so that the self could be tested in these ways, so that in the face of darkness, one could, through will and faith, seek to see through the apparent situation to the eternal substratum, shall we say, underneath of unity unending. One is freed from the bounds of the illusion the more that they are able to witness the Creator universally. This instrument is tugging on us to wrap things up in order that our friends of Biondha may speak through the one known as T. We thank the questioner for his questions and the opportunity they offered us to share our thoughts. We would remind each that the work is your own, and that you consider these thoughts for their utility on your journey, but never place them above your own discernment and primary awareness. We are halos, and we leave you in the resounding love and light of the one Creator that is forever with you. And we now transfer our contact, or rather contact, to the one known as T.
We are those of Biondha, and we make ourselves at home with you in this space in service of the one infinite Creator, with much gratitude and with much interest in exploring what we shall discover together. It has been some time since we were blessed to join this circle in this way. However, much like our friends of Halos and Tovo, and those of Quo, Hutton, Lutvi, we have been walking beside you, alongside you, bearing witness to your journey and providing unseen support even in those moments of trial. That being said, we are very grateful to have this opportunity to not only walk alongside you, but to sit in this space of contemplation. And we would ask if there is a query to which we may speak.
Hello, Biondha. I see the art of listening as a very important and often undemonstrated spiritual practice. How do we listen more deeply to ourselves and to others and to the Creator?
We are Biondha, and we thank you for this query, my brother. And in our attempt to speak to this question, we would impart upon the instrument to put aside a few moments to do that very practice and to listen. The peoples on this planet at this time are experiencing an illusion that is quite colorful, that is perhaps disorienting, and at times full. It is a room with many distractions in which you are attempting to find silence. And so we see how those on this planet may, in their efforts to navigate their environment, play into the noise, make space for more noise, and relate to that noise by, at times, making more noise. And when there is effort put only into making noise, then there is an atrophy of the ability to listen. Think of it as two dogs barking on either side of the fence at one another. There's a ratcheting of volume. There is little space left for communication. It is simply a shouting match. We realize in that metaphor that we are speaking of a certain communication style, but that particular dynamic can be true of the way a seeker experiences their experience, that there is catalyst, that there is friction, that there is challenge, or that there is bliss. And instead of allowing the self to sit in that experience, the seeker, instead, attempts to meet that experience in a similar fashion. When the seeker feels pain, the seeker puts attention on that pain, and the seeker potentially causes more pain. For instance, reacting out of pain, perhaps inflicting pain upon others in response to that pain. In another example, the seeker experiences bliss, and instead of sitting in the bliss and witnessing it, attempts to further seek that bliss, attempts to perhaps increase that bliss, and in so doing, loses that bliss. Thus, the act of listening can be seen as an act of presence. Listening is not only engaging in what you may see as your ears or your faculty of hearing, but even more so as the complete open-hearted acceptance and receiving of that which one is given. It can also be seen as the intentional open-arm welcome of that which may not even be perceived, that which is beyond experience. The seeker who wishes to more fully understand themselves and others must also find space to engage in this presence, in this act of listening. For listening can also be seen as the act of unconditional love. We are sure you can guess that our first suggestion for fostering this practice of listening includes a similar practice of meditation, of removing the distractions around oneself, of walking outside the room, of discarding the costume you wear, of tossing away the identity you so firmly hold on to in favor of simply sitting in this space of non-attachment, this space of pure freedom and boundlessness. And in that space, opening one's heart to see what comes in without judgment. And in those moments wherein one can discover the full opening of the heart, one may experience and know what it means to truly listen. For it is in those moments that one finds and discovers forgiveness, that one finds and discovers acceptance, empathy, and understanding, so that one may walk out of the practice of meditation with a greater sense of unity, that one may be able to interface with the illusion with more patience, seeing it for what it is, a cosmic, beautiful dance that is so designed to teach self more about self and other self. And so the seeker who owns the practice of acceptance and openness in the state of meditation can recall how loving and welcoming that moment truly is, and may subsequently offer that to that which is seemingly outside of oneself. Now, we understand that this can be complicated in a culture and environment wherein the idea of rightness is very much valued, and that status or experience perhaps need be communicated or affected upon another. And so this is a great challenge for you in this time and space. It is a worthy challenge, and one that those on this planet fully accepted in their incarnation upon this planet. And boy, did you choose an interesting time to engage in this practice. But we promise you that this work is attainable. This goal is within sight. We can see it in the way that humans relate to one another in moments of large-scale tragedy. We see it in the way that people on this planet show up for one another during times of natural disasters, or when there are wars between cultures. The ability to simply sit with an other self and hear what it is that they feel allows the listening self a better understanding of what it is within them that hurts, that is needed, and how to better take care of the one who is hurt. And so, engaging in the practice of listening to the other self, the self then learns how to listen first to the self, to trust that what comes up through oneself, which, when done with an open heart, can be helpful, powerful, and becomes a truth for the self. This instrument is feeling as though she perhaps struggled through this question. And so we would ask if there is any piece to this question that we miss speaking to. We are Biondha.
Biondha, I didn't perceive struggle, but I thought that was great. And I would like to revisit it and then open up the floor for the next question. Well, change of plans, I'll leave that to you, Biondha. I'm good.
We are Biondha, and we believe we understand. We would ask if there is a separate query to which we may speak.
Biondha, this is from our friend Jay. Can you talk about the metaphysical aspects of laughter and tears? How the vibrational energy of these emotions can help our spiritual growth?
We are Biondha, and we receive this query with much gratitude, my brothers. We see how this particular query may be important at this time, while also noting that throughout history, as you see it, the emotions of laughter and tears, or at least the emotions behind those manifestations, have long been integral parts to the experience, not only on this planet, but many others. And we can see how, particularly in certain cultures on this planet, the expression of certain emotions have been bottled up and assigned as shameful acts and shameful manifestations, while other cultures have been fostered and celebrated. And thus there can be some confusion as to how you or how one relates to manifesting emotions in general. For instance, we can see how, in certain cultures in modernity, where humans have felt the expression of tears, that sadness could be seen as a weakness, or how perhaps the expression of levity through laughter could be seen as not taking self or situation seriously. However, these expressions are incredibly powerful vehicles for translating and communicating emotion between self and other self, as well as releasing energy from self. We would cite examples wherein the self begins to laugh in an incredibly crowded environment, seemingly at nothing, and how, if done long enough, those around that self begin laughing alongside. For what, you may ask, is creating this laughter? And we would state that it is this shared sense, this shared channel of experience wherein the self is able to experience and channel joy, that one self was able to inspire other self to engage in wonder, engage in lightness, and express an internal sense of joy of that childlike self. And in those situations, we ask that you think about what was the net benefit from such an expression. In many instances, there may be a seeker who feels very closed off or feels very hurt, but in that moment was able to experience some relief, was able to see a smile that brightened their day, was able to express something within them that had long felt out of reach, and was able to engage in a part of themselves that they long missed. Another example is the expression of tears. Think how often you have felt a desire or need to cry, be that from pain or joy. That internal sensation and the feeling of release that accompanies it at once allows those tears to fall. It is a release of energy. It is an expression of an emotion that had felt stifled, that had felt trapped. And when one traps those feelings behind a sturdy or unemotive face, then one is not truly burning as their brightest versions of themselves. They are hiding their light that disallows these emotions to come through. There is an addition to the experience of the greater universe that you are engaging more authentically with, experience that you are relating more authentically, that you are not hiding yourself behind a notion that you need to be strong or serious. And when one can more fully engage in that authenticity without judgment for self, one may inspire those around them to do the same. And while that may seem to be a lofty goal or a situation wherein everyone is crying or everyone is laughing, we would state that in so doing, when people can more authentically relate to one another and themselves, then there is far less space for artifice. And that relating with others authentically, relating with self authentically, removes the power of judgment of the negative variety, removes the power of preconceived notions. For you are showing up exactly as you are, exactly where you are, and able to accept the self outside of you exactly where they are. And so we would say that allowing the self to emote with tears and with laughter, precisely when they feel not only appropriate, but needed, when they come up organically, can be seen as precious songs, precious gifts to this planet, to yourself, to those around you. They allow the self and others to open their hearts more fully and to be more fully themselves. We must apologize. This instrument is feeling incredibly judgmental of her ability to translate our thoughts, and so we would ask, with much grace, if we may leave this circle at this time and allow our friends of Tovo to speak one final time through the one known as A. We are those of Biondha.
We are those of Tovo. We are again with this instrument. We have experienced this time with your circle with great joy. We express our immense gratitude for the opportunity to join you, to speak our thoughts, and to bear witness to the dance of the art of channeling, witnessing those of Halos and Biondha enjoying their own dance within the circle. This has been a very enjoyable and pleasant dynamic for us to take part in, for it allows us all, as our own individual social memory complexes, to both partake in this act of channeling and offer ourselves as support to our other brothers and sisters attempting to speak their own thoughts through you as instruments. It has been beneficial to us to not only have this conscious, intentional support to come to you as a group, but to express ourselves as our individual, you may say, personalities. We encourage this group to continue exploring and discussing how the act of channeling may be advanced and what vistas await this group with us as we join you on this journey. The potential is immense, though we ourselves cannot say specifically what is possible, for it will be an act of exploration alongside you. At this time, we would leave this circle with gratitude and with joy in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We are those of Tovo. Adene. Adene Vasu Baragas.